Right, I think that's finished, that clock, so I'll make a start. Right, first things first, if people can put their phones on silent or switch them off. Next one, members. Can I ask all of you, have you all done your training? Yeah. Right. Right, item 2, minutes of previous meeting. Can we pass them as a true record? Thank you. Any declarations? I'll start with Councillor Moore. Councillor Anwar.
Yes, Chair. I was approached by the applicant for application 2022-94117, no advice given. I was also approached by over a dozen members of the public regarding the application, no advice given on either.
Councillor Sokol.
Yeah. Item 12 on page 57. I think I got an email, but I did not reply to email. Yeah.
Right. Councillor Ramsey.
Yes, I've just handed my declaration in, but on 2 accounts, no advice given.
Right. Councillor Perez.
Yeah, item 13 from the applicant and the objector, no advice given.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. 2 emails responded by that I couldn't give any advice or comment. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bamford.
Yeah, emails on item 11 and item 13, no advice given.
Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Chair. I have received emails on item number 11 and number 13. Both no advice given. Item 11 was from an objector and item 13 was from somebody who was in support of the application. Thank you.
Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. Item 10 and 11 from objectors, no advice given.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. Item 10 and 11 from objectors noted. Item 13, I've had a phone call from the agent. No comment given.
Myself, 2022-92100 from an objector. No advice given. Just have a recap on membership. Mark, you're here today for Josh. As rest is that Mohan?
Yeah. Here for Councillor Eric. Councillor Eric first.
Paul. Yeah, and you may have noticed I'm not going low, but I'm standing in for her today because her mum's extremely poorly.
Yeah, apology from going.
Yeah. Right. Admission of the public. As we know, it's a public meeting. Item 5, deputations, petitions. No. Any public questions? Right. Site visits were taken out this morning at Healy Lane, Backley, at Moor Lane, Gummersall, and then down at bottom of Moor Lane, Gummersall, just off Bradford Road. Now we're on to planning applications. This is item 10, page 11. Callum.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Callum Harrison, Senior Planning Officer and Case Officer for application 2022-93344 for the conversion and extension of existing building to form 10 one-bedroom apartments and associated external works at the School of Dance and Performing Arts, 6163 Moor Lane, Gommersall. The application has been referred to the subcommittee following the receipt of 263 representations from the public, as well as representations from Councillor Smaid and Councillor Thompson. As such, given the public interest, the Chair accepted the reason for bringing the application to committee. The application site lies at the junction of Dewsbury Road and Moor Lane and measures 0.15 hectares. The site lies within a predominantly residential area consisting of properties of varying character and style. The building is currently used by a dance school. There are or have been cafe use and antiques use within the building in recent times. However, these uses appear unauthorised as per the planning record. The site comprises of an existing 3-storey hipped roof stone-built building with associated hard standing and car parking and garden space. Access to the site is from Moor Lane at the southern boundary. Boundaries comprise of a stone-built wall, approximately 1 to 1.5 metres high, hedgerows and mature trees. Whilst the building does have some age and character, it is not listed or determined to meet the threshold for a non-designated heritage asset. The application is seeking permission for the conversion and extension of the existing building to form 10 one-bedroom apartments and associated external works. The proposed extension is to the eastern side of the original building. It would be 2 storeys in height and finished with a pyramid hipped roof. The extension would host 4 of the proposed apartments. The extension would also be set in from the side elevation of the original building and have a ridge height well below the ridge of the original building. The extension will be faced in stone to match the original building also. The connection between the original building and the extension would be via a recessed section of rendered walling. Whilst officers accept that there will be some impact on visual amenity, the extension has been well designed. Following the submission of a formal pre-app, the development has been designed to respect the character of the existing building whilst also being subservient. It would utilise the large Kirklees well and still provide a good level of surrounding outdoor amenity space which would contribute positively to the setting. Officers therefore consider that the design and appearance of the extension accords with Local Plan Policy LP 24, Chapter 12 of the MPPF and the House Builders Design Guide SPD with regard to visual amenity and design. In terms of amenity, the proposed apartments meet the nationally described space standards. The proposal also retains sufficient garden space for private outdoor amenity space for future occupants. The development would also not cause any material loss of privacy or appear overbearing to neighbours, given the orientation of the building and the separation distances that have been achieved. Therefore, the proposal is also considered to accord with the aforementioned policy with regard to residential amenity and the amenity of future occupants also. Officers would like to address the representation which state that the proposed one-bedroom apartments are not needed in the area. The case officer, along with KC Strategic Housing, have assessed this need. The Strategic Housing Market Assessment for the Batley and Spen Ward identifies that new 1- and 2-bedroom dwellings are in fact required. As such, KC Strategic Housing support the proposed housing type as it accords with Local Plan Policy LP 11, which sets out that housing development should meet the need of the latest evidenced housing need, which this does. Whilst officers do acknowledge that there is no mix to the dwelling type, the only feasible alternative housing will be for a 2-bedroom apartment, which were proposed at the pre-app stage. To facilitate a mix of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, either a much larger extension would be required, which officers consider would have harmful visual amenity impacts, or less dwellings could be provided, which will go less far in meeting the housing need. As such, there is a genuine and identified need for 1-bed dwellings, and officers consider that the proposed scheme would make a valuable and significant contribution to meeting this identified need. Officers note that a large proportion of representations received raised concerns regarding highway safety. Councillor Smage also raised concerns as to whether there would be sufficient off-street parking and safe access and egress from the site. As such, I would like to bring Ryan Kinder, KC Highways Development Management, in to speak and address these concerns.
Through you, Chair, Ryan Kinder, Highway Development Management. To summarise the highway section of the report, the proposed development is expected to generate 4 two-way vehicular movements in the AM and PM peak periods. This, compared to the current use of dance studio and other uses, would result in a considerable reduction in terms of vehicular movements to and from the site. The access arrangements is existing, with a low wall to the site frontage ensuring adequate visibility. The proposed parking of 1 space per unit, plus 2 number visitor parking spaces, is considered sufficient to serve a development of this scale. With regards to the servicing of the development, a suitable bin storage facility is provided within the site. This would see bins presented at the back of the footway within the curtilage of the development for collection, with the final details secured via appropriate condition. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ryan. In conclusion, this application has been assessed against relevant policies in the development plan and other material consideration. While the principle of development is considered acceptable as the site is is set in a residential area, officers also truly sympathise with the loss of an established dance school. This use, which is a privately run commercial business, unfortunately does not meet the definition of a community asset. As such, its blanket protection cannot be secured via planning policy. Officers have also considered the impact on residential amenity of properties nearby, whereby there will be no material harm. The proposed development would also respect the character of the host building and have a positive impact on highway safety and parking, whilst providing sufficient off-street parking and reducing the number of vehicle trips to and from the site. Overall, the proposal would see the redevelopment of a brownfield site and make a significant contribution to addressing an identified local housing need. The scheme would also not prejudice any drainage, flood risk or biodiversity matters. As such, the scheme accords with the purpose of the Kirklees local plan, the National Planning Policy Framework and the applicable supplementary planning documents, and is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in section 12 of the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Right, first speaker we've got is Councillor Smage. No, yeah.
Thank you. My earlier comments have been circulated, so I just have a few comments today. As you will have seen, a lot of the older buildings on Moor Lane are all made of stone, including this building. The boundary for the conservation area is actually just up the road and runs down the centre of Moor Lane further up. So any works to any stone building needs to be sympathetic to its surroundings. But my main concerns are around the highways that I want to highlight. Whilst there is traffic with the dance studio and parking is at a premium with parking on the road, we do not want problems all day, every day, because there are issues around access and vehicles trying to get in and out of the entrance. I cannot see how the existing entrance has, as the report states, room for 2 cars to pass at one time, as well as having a pedestrian entrance. At the moment, not a lot of vehicles use the entrance. In fact, people seem to prefer to park on the road. And if you're going one way in particular, coming down the road, you have to pull out to pull in. Vehicles to the proposed car parking will come out directly into an area where there is on-street parking. Yeah, I cannot see any assessment of how vehicles can get out of the entrance into the road. I also do not see any improvement in the plans as to whether the road width is wide enough for a footpath so that pedestrians are not stepping out straight into the traffic. Equally, the suitability of having bins in the road for collection, I don't think it's been addressed. You say that they can be left at the entrance, but then how are people going to get their vehicles in and out of the entrance if you're having to leave the bins? Because there's no footpath, they're either on the road or on the entrance. So that entrance will not only have traffic that can go both ways into the site, a pedestrian entrance, and also a bin store. So I really am concerned that we don't want to have even more problems on a permanent basis than we've got at this moment in time. Thank you.
Right. Next speaker is Julian Farrer. You have 3 minutes. If you can just go to that microphone at end, yeah, please. It's just you're on YouTube and webcast and all that kind of stuff. No, 3 actually.
Well, thank you, Chair. I'm here today to object to the application as a member of the local community. The question that we might not know is what is the dancing house? And I would respectfully disagree with the planning officer that it isn't a local asset. It is, to my mind, a vital community asset. It's been here for over 100 years, and it's become a locally well-loved building with a cafe and a garden, and it's well used by both young and old. Its purpose, in essence, is to provide classes, such as children's dance classes, for instance. This is important because such classes give children a skill for life and the self-confidence that goes with that skill. It also offers classes for older people, such as Pilates or ballet for the over 55s, encouraging older people to try new skills. So why is this important? Well, exercise classes, such as Pilates, help prevent falls and diseases like osteoporosis, particularly in older people, as well as helping to fight obesity, all of which reduce future demand on the NHS. Health equalities are also reduced since the health benefits are for all age groups. And classes also help to create social skills, for example, by enabling children to make friends. In addition, young children, older people and families can meet in the play area and garden, combating social isolation. And this aspect is reinforced by the cafe, which provides an important meeting place for older people, helping again to prevent social isolation, anxiety and depression, and thereby again reducing potential strain on the NHS. And more widely, the provision of this local facility promotes health and well-being through exercise, encourages a more healthy lifestyle, and helps instill and promote the value of exercise, of which I'm sure we know a lot. But by doing so, it also encourages, or rather discourages antisocial behaviour. As has been said, it's set within a residential area, as the building, so local people, especially those without cars, can walk to it, which is important because public transport in that area is not very good. So by virtue of its position, the dancing house adds to the aims of sustainable transport. Two other aspects I would draw to your attention. If the application is approved, local employment opportunities will be lost, such as the people who work in the cafe. And secondly, there are no similar social hubs in the area, and many other health and fitness classes in the area are oversubscribed. Moreover, quite a lot of people don't like going, with the greatest respect, to gyms. They feel uncomfortable. In conclusions, therefore, I would say that the dancing house is a valuable local facility. It provides a local service with undoubted social, physical and mental benefits, and its loss will be irreplaceable for many local people. Thank you, Chair.
Is Alan Powell?
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name is Alan Powell. I'm a Director of Den Architecture, Architect and Agent for this application. The application before you today is a recommendation for approval by officers, which we hope you will be able to support. The positive recommendation is a direct result of following the correct due process and developing a well-considered scheme. In advance of submitting the planning application, a pre-application inquiry was submitted to the local authority. As outlined in the officer's report, the principles of the scheme, both in terms of the conversion of the existing building and new build extension, were considered acceptable, albeit concerns were raised in respect to the size of the proposed extension, which has been subsequently addressed in the design submitted in this application. Furthermore, a leaflet drop was undertaken in advance of submitting the application, advising all residents within the local community of the proposals and the subsequent application. As outlined in the officer's report, the proposed scheme is seen to accord with all relevant planning policies. A particular note is outlined in paragraph 10.7 of the report, which states that policy does not consider the dance school to be a community facility, and as such there is no requirement for an assessment against local plan policies LP 48 and Chapter 8 of the MPFF. The paragraph further goes on to say that the Built Leisure and Sports Facilities Strategic Framework Assessment Report identifies more than 30 studios in the region, with schools in nearby Cleckheaton and Hepburn. Parking in relationship to the current use of the building as a dance school is clearly an issue in the area, and in particular Moor Lane, with historic congestion and parking issues. The proposals are fully supported by Highways officers, with the officers' report stating in paragraph 10.23 that officers consider the proposed use safer in terms of highway safety than the existing arrangement. In addition, and as per a letter of support, the proposed use would have less traffic movements to and from the site, causing less harm. The proposal for 10 one-bedroom apartments provides much-needed one-bed accommodation in the area, a point raised in both letters of support and as highlighted in paragraph 10.5, which states that KC Strategic Housing supports the proposal housing type, and as such, officers deem the scheme accords with local plan policy LP11. For information, the applicant will be retaining all apartments within their existing residential portfolio. There have clearly been a lot of objections submitted for this application, which we respect, as well as letters of support, which we have welcomed. All are covered in the officer's report, with conclusions clearly outlined in paragraph 7.6. In conclusion, the proposed scheme meets all relevant planning policies, will significantly improve highway safety environment in the area, and will provide much-needed residential accommodation. We would hope that you can support your officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Charlotte McHugh.
Committee. My name is Charlotte McHugh and I am the applicant. I am a local resident, having lived on Moor Lane, Gummersall for the past 16 years. I became an accidental landlord when I had to rent my own home to pay the mortgage whilst I worked abroad. I now have a small portfolio of 2 and 3 bedroom houses, and rental demand has never been higher. The social housing market is, however, under immense pressure. Waiting lists are long. Many low-income families rely on the private rented sector instead. However, private landlords are selling up and exiting the market due to rapidly rising mortgage costs, EPC requirements and recent tax changes, reducing profit margins as never before. The supply and demand disparity continues to drive up rental prices for tenants. I personally have tenants who have rented from me for the last 10 to 12 years. They are really struggling and can no longer afford the homes they have always lived in. They are desperate to downsize. I am also the part owner of a small hotel. We have had an elderly couple residing with us for 6 years now due to an insufficient supply of ground floor rental accommodation. My family and I have owned the building on Moor Lane for 45 years now. In recent years, the ageing building has required substantial repairs to maintain it, with costs outweighing rental income, which is low. The current tenants of the dance school took over the lease in 2016, with the rent remaining the same as for the previous tenant. The lease expired in March 2021, and whilst trying to negotiate a new lease, I decided to cover my options through the redevelopment of the building, during which time I kept them fully informed of the process. They allowed access for the surveys required, and I, in return, gave them an extension of time. Ultimately, a new lease could not be agreed. They have appointed Andrew Steele of Michael Steele & Co. to search for new premises. One potential property has been found so far. I myself have looked for alternative premises for them and felt a number were appropriate. Okay. I firmly believe that we must take action now to boost the supply of rental property. The only way to improve supply is an increase in new investment from corporate and private landlords. I sincerely hope you can support my application. Thank you.
Right, members, over to you. Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you very much. So through you, Chair. Just from the point of view of highways, just to double check the number of cars that would be expected to go in and out compared to previously. Just give us an idea of that so we can get a feel of how busy it will be. Can I come back when he's answered that, Chair?
Through you, Chair. The proposed development is expected to forecast only two-way vehicle movements in the AM and PM peak periods, whereas the hours of the dance studio could generate up to 30. In addition, there's the unauthorised use of the cafe, and I'm not sure if the antique shop's still running. That's gone. But the cafe also adds to that, so it's quite a significant number in terms of reduction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's really helpful. Just another couple of points. I'm very positive about it being a brownfield site, and it's really good that you identified that the need for one-bedroom flats is actually a requirement in that area. So thank you for clarifying that. That would have been another question. I'll leave it for that for the moment. Thank you.
Next, Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions to start with. Can I just make sure I understand where the bins are going to be put and how they get there? Going to be put for collection, and how they get there from wherever they're stored before that. And the other question I have is, what is the exact definition of a community asset, please? I'll come back after I've had the answers to those.
Through you, Chair. There is a bin store in the development internally, which is sort of part way down on your left-hand side. Now, ordinarily, collection arrangements, if they're carried out by the council, they don't enter private premises. It's an arrangement where the bins are presented at the side of the road, but within the curtilage of the development. However, because this is flats, generally speaking, there'd be large bins like the Euro type bins, not individual ones. As such, we've conditioned an appropriate condition to decide how we're going to deal with that, and that'll be through discussions with the council's waste management team. Sometimes they come to an agreement where they will enter the site, drag the bins out on behalf of the applicants, but whatever arrangement becomes, we won't accept bins being left in the road. I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Chair.
And through you, Chair, in regards to the community asset, there's not a hard and fast definition, but MPPF paragraph 93 says that facilities for community needs, planning policies and decisions should plan positively for the provision and use of shared spaces and community facilities such as local shops, meeting place, sports venues, open space, cultural buildings, public houses and places of worship. The general way where we'd apply in planning law is anywhere where the public can essentially enter at their own wish. Some of them are private areas that fall under there, but generally the general public can just go in and utilise those spaces. With a dance school, we don't feel it necessarily fits that because they'll be pre-booked, there'll be classes, etc. It doesn't necessarily mean that people can just decide I'd like to go and meet in that space at this time and just go and do that. So that is how we'd apply it, and they're the lists that the MPPF gives. Yes, and just to touch on the cafe point, whereas the cafe point may fall in there, it is unauthorised. There is no planning permission on record for that cafe. There is also no lawful development certificate to demonstrate that it is lawful. So I don't want to categorically sit here and say to you that it is definitely unlawful, but there is no permission in place on record for it. So it'd be the amount of time, whether it's been there on that debate. But we haven't investigated that, as there is no certificate of lawfulness in application in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very helpful because I wasn't clear where the bins were actually going. And now it's now quite clear, and I'm quite satisfied with that location because I think that it will work. in many ways, I am very sorry that this application is going to close down what is considered to be, even if it can't be classified as a community asset in the sense that we've just had described to us, that it is a valued facility. I don't deny that. The thing is that we then have to decide between that and what's in front of us, and we have been given some pretty good reasons for giving permission to this application, and I think that not the least of which being that it adds to the supply of single bedroom properties for people, which is a particular requirement of the area in which it sits. So, and what I find encouraging also is that efforts are being made to find alternative premises for the dance school. Now, whether this comes to anything is another matter. So I'm afraid that we may be giving permission for an alternative use, even if the alternative location for the dance school hasn't been found. But regrettably, we've got to make a decision one way or the other. And I have to say that I am disposed to agree with the officer recommendation, because it is a satisfactory reuse of the building. It provides extra housing, and it also respects to a large extent what's already there and doesn't do violence in a very serious way. Actually, it'll probably get rid of that horrible external staircase, which doesn't do anything for the appearance of the building. So I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I didn't pick up properly. Chair, I understand the feelings of local people regarding the loss of dance hall and the community facility and the building. But we have to accept these facilities, dance or community facility, was owned by the private owner of this building. It's not a council or other, yeah? And planning officer have no power over there, yeah? The owner of the building must have run the dance hall, the community facility. We have to be very clear on there. Chair, this application is, and this building is in the residential area, yeah? And it's in a brownfield land. Say we develop the brownfield site first.
appropriate development as far as the local area is concerned, and I move that we refuse until planning is adjusted to a more appropriate build in that local area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And just got a couple of questions which I'd like to ask through yourself, if possible, to officers. Let's just say this was approved and the condition number 6 was looking to be discussed and agreed. Could you let me know who is going to agree the measures of noise mitigation? Just thinking ahead, potentially for quality of life for those living in these new homes, and looking potentially at neighbours, potential overspill for noise from the properties for the neighbours. Now, I understand from what I've heard that that's not going to be an issue, but the particular concern I have is regarding noise insulation in one-bedroom properties. If people are on low incomes, struggling anyway, the last thing they need is noisy neighbours, and new properties that are being built or conversions. I'm keen to ensure that they are not built with insufficient noise insulation, so that the quality of life of the people living in these properties is upheld. The other issue I would like to just have clarity on is, I know it's been mentioned already, but LP 48. Now, we've heard that residents feel that this is a much-loved community asset. Now, I'm sure it comes of great disappointment that LP 48, which is a local policy, I understand, doesn't withstand this building as being a local community asset. For the purposes of some clarity on that policy and how that policy was devised, could you just clarify a little bit about the LP 48 policy, because there will be a lot of frustration with regards to that, given the fact that there's a high volume of objections. In terms of the other point as well, the representation from Councillor Smage was regarding the access. Now, with regards to access, an illustration of the new access arrangements would have been great. Obviously, we haven't got those today, but in terms of how access is going to be, could you explain a visual picture to us so we could get our head around how it will look, even though we haven't got a photo? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, do you want to start on access?
We'll just start on access, if that's okay. The existing access is to be widened to 6.5 metres overall, which will be sufficient room to allow two-way vehicular access. In addition, there'll be a 1.2 metre wide pedestrian segregated access into the site. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Just in regards to the condition about noise that you mentioned, Councillor Gregg, in terms of that assessment, so there's been noise impact assessments anyway, I believe. If not, that would be where the condition would start, and setting background levels of the area as it is now. That would be reviewed by our environmental health colleagues. And then from that, the applicant would be produced to give us a scheme, essentially, which would then mitigate whatever the background level is, mitigate it then inside the building. From there, there'd be all sorts of information on the scheme. So there'll be installations, you say, there'd be extract system details, ventilation details, etc. So all of that will come on the scheme. That would then be reviewed back again by the environmental health colleagues, who would apply it against the British standard tests. And if it accords with that, then we would essentially discharge a condition subject to it being implemented as the information given to us, and retain like that thereafter. If it transpired that there was some breach of that agreed system, then there would be in breach of the condition, and enforcement action could then be taken. So in summary, our environmental health officers would make sure it meets the relevant British standards in terms of future occupants. And then just going on to LP 48, obviously that policy transpired through the local plan, which was adopted in 2019, and the draft plans before that. The definition that falls in there does align with the MPPF. The definition I read out in response to Councillor Pinnock's question was from the National Planning Policy Framework. So LP 48 is essentially a reiterated, however in slightly more detailed version of that. It is based off that paragraph or the predecessor before it was updated. So it is in line with that, and that is ultimately how it got adoption, because it accorded with the MPPF. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Julia, on the...
Thank you, Chair, through you. So in terms of the policy justification, that is also set out in the local plan, and as Callum just sort of mentioned, it does reiterate what is in the MPPF, and it refers to sort of the local services and community facilities in villages, such as local shops, meeting places, cultural buildings, public houses and places of worship. So is Callum and the team have pointed out, we don't, as officers, we don't feel that it falls within the definition as referred to in there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Very appreciative for the comments. I think from what has been explained there, it is clear that the rationale is based on the LPF 48. But however, I think Councillor Circle mentioned it was regarding it being a privately owned property. A number of properties that occur, a number of exemptions, such as public houses, etc., are also privately owned. So really, I can well understand the frustration in terms of the fact that this is a community asset. Clearly it is, but unfortunately the Kirklees policies are somewhat tying hands on that from what I understand. So I'd just like to thank you again. And just finally, on the noise, any measures, if the properties were to be built to mitigate noise, would be very grateful. Thank you.
Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm glad that we've gone into depth about the community asset nature of this, and it has, regrettably for my mind, it has fallen away, and we're not probably able to consider that any further. I am inclined to agree with Councillors Pinnock and Sokol that this should go ahead. I have one last question though, and it's possibly the one that's left unanswered from Councillor Smage, which is about the design. And we've had a comment that we've a good design result. And I'd just like to know a little bit more about that, about this is a prominent building, even though it's subservient to the host building, it's in a prominent position. We like it to actually appear at its best, and I just wondered about the finishing stone or the finishing appearance. Is it like a stone composite facing, or is it a random stone, or just if we could have a word on that. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. In terms of the materials wheel condition that samples are provided to us, we could specifically add in that condition or a separate condition leading into it that it is natural stone. We could even go as far as, if the committee really wanted to, that we could potentially look at sample on site as well, given the age of the stone it'd be trying to match if digital samples weren't sufficient. But yeah, simply put, we would be looking for something as close as possible. It's not going to be exactly the same given the age, but as close as possible in terms of colour, shape, style, etc. Just as a note that KC Conservation Design did look at this at the pre-app stage, and they didn't, although the building has visual amenity value, they didn't put any particular heritage value to it, just as a bit of background as well.
Thank you, Chair. I think if we could put that condition in, that would be, I think that would make this a robust application and a robust acceptance of the application. I'd be happy to support that. And it is about the conservation area, the conservation and heritage of this building, but it's also about the prominence of it as well, given the, I'll say this, the local vernacular of the other buildings in the area. Thank you.
Councillor Parvez.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know if it's possible to put a condition on where you can have just certain age group on these one-bedroom flats. We don't want middle-age or elderly age groups, the youngsters, and have a lot of noise pollution and antisocial behaviour in that area, because maybe some of them one-bedroom flats might be rented and some of them might be sold. So is there a possibility where we could have a condition on what a certain age group can rent them properties?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of future occupants and conditions, there's the 6 tests, and one of them is whether it's necessary and reasonable. To heavily restrict the future occupants, I totally understand the reasons that you say, and it's similar to, I suppose, what Councillor Thompson was saying in terms of the genuine need in that area. I understand that, but it's whether it would pass that 6 test is absolutely necessary and reasonable, and I'm not sure from my professional judgment that it would pass that reasonable and necessary test to just heavily restrict who the future occupants could be. That is my professional opinion on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, I would concur with that in terms of the consultee responses, the assessment overall of the application, which has been undertaken by the officers. Our advice is that a condition of that type isn't required in this instance. Thank you, Chair.
Any more questions or comments? Otherwise, it has been moved and seconded to accept officer's recommendation. Right, we'll go to a vote.
Thanks, Chair. So the vote is to approve the officer's recommendation, delegate to approve. Councillor Pervez?
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry, with the additional condition.
Is that agreed?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. So yeah, the proposal, it is for the building, the extension to be faced in natural stone. The condition that we've then suggested at condition 3 is about the samples of that facing material, so that natural stone. We can, when wording up that final condition, be specific in terms of the natural stone sample to be submitted. So yeah, we can do that as part of the condition. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so with the additional condition. Councillor Pervez?
Approval.
Thank you. Councillor Ramsey? For. Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Anwar?
For.
Councillor Moore? Councillor Thompson? Councillor Bamford? Councillor Gregg? Councillor Lawson?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Hall?
For.
So the officer recommendation is carried.
Right, next application is... Yeah, all right, 2 minutes. I got that score right anyway, 8-3. I'm used to it.
Yeah, no, we don't. It goes down real quick and then somebody's... Yeah.
Might have noticed we need to take more breaks as we're all getting older. So, right, next item, page 27, and this is Moor Lane again. Alice. When you ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. I'm Alice Downham. I'm the case officer for this application. This outline application is for the erection of residential development of 10 dwellings, demolition of the existing extension at 27 Moor Lane, widening of the existing access and realignment of boundary walls at land to the rear of 23 to 43 Moor Lane, Gummersall, Cleckheaton. The principle of development and access are the only matters under consideration as part of this application. Appearance, scale, layout and landscaping are reserved matters to be considered under a later application. The application is brought to committee following a request by Councillor Smage, whose full reasoning is set out in the report, and as a significant volume of local opinion has been received, 112 representations in total. The application site is approximately 0.42 hectares in size and is located to the rear of existing residential properties on the northern side of Moor Lane, with an existing access between numbers 25 and 27 Moor Lane. The site is unallocated land which has not previously been developed. There are a number of mature trees along the northern boundary covered by tree preservation orders, and the site slopes downhill to the northeast. It is surrounded by residential development on all sides, 1990s cul-de-sacs to the north and east, mid-20th century dwellings on Moor Lane to the south, and historic properties on Knowles Lane to the west, including a Grade 2-star listed building. The conservation area boundary runs along Moor Lane to the south of the site and along Knowles Lane to the west. The report before members details officers' careful assessment of the proposal. To summarise the report, this is an unallocated site, and the principle of development is considered acceptable, as the development would be in keeping with the residential use of the local area and the housing need for Gummersall. This image shows the proposed indicative site plan. As noted, appearance, scale, layout and landscaping are reserved matters. However, the indicative proposed site plan layout, shows that the dwellings would likely have acceptable relationships to existing dwellings, which would be fully considered at reserved matter stage. 10 dwellings on this site would achieve a density of approximately 23.8 dwellings per hectare, which is lower than the 35 dwellings per hectare set out in the LP7 of the local plan. However, this is considered acceptable given the varied density of the surrounding area and the site constraints. Moreover, the indicative plan provides space for other material planning considerations, including habitat creation, non-car dominated dwelling frontages, and good levels of garden space for the proposed dwellings. In terms of heritage assets, conservation and design consider that the proposal would not harm the setting of the adjacent conservation area due to the existing mid-20th century properties around the site. However, conservation and design do have concerns about the potential harm to the setting of the listed building, particularly given the proposed removal of trees along the western boundary. As the proposed layout is indicative only at this stage, a full assessment of the potential harm to the designated heritage asset would be required at reserved matters stage. In terms of trees, the submitted information details that the existing trees offer a range of amenity value from low to medium and are of reasonable condition. Several low-value trees would be removed to facilitate the proposal, with trees of higher amenity value being retained. Kirklees Council Trees officers have reviewed the submitted information and have no objection, in principle, to the proposal and its potential effects on existing trees, but note that further detailed assessment would be required at reserved matter stage. The applicant has submitted revised supporting information on highways matters. These conclude that the proposal would likely not have a detrimental impact on the free flow of traffic or lead to congestion along Moor Lane or the wider local highway network. A revised site access strategy has been received, which shows the western visibility splay would be achieved through the removal and relocation of parts of the southern boundary walls and vegetation of numbers 23 and 25 Moor Lane, with the wall of 25 Moor Lane being set back 2.4 metres from the site frontage. The rear garden area of number 27 Moor Lane, which is owned by the applicant, would be reduced to achieve the required internal forward visibility. Provision of a pedestrian footway into the site has also been included in the revised scheme on both sides of the access road. And to achieve the access, the side extension to number 27 would be demolished. The applicant has also confirmed they do not intend to offer the internal estate road for adoption to the council through a Section 38 agreement. As such, a management company would need to be incorporated for a Section 106 agreement. I'll now bring in Ryan to provide technical details in relation to highways.
Through you, Chair. To summarise the highway section of the report, given the application is for outline, no vehicle trip generation has been submitted. However, for up to 10 dwellings, it is anticipated the development could generate up to 6 vehicular movements in the AM and PM peak periods. With regard to the extent of the visibility displays at the site access, the speed survey markers that have been positioned at the extent of the achievable visibility displays to determine if vehicular speeds are acceptable at this location. This is in accordance with CA 185 and Manual for Streets 2. The site frontage will be cleared and surfaced to achieve the visibility displays. This includes the front gardens of the adjacent properties. Access for refuse collection vehicles has been demonstrated to gain access. This takes into account on-street parking opposite the site access. Thank you, Chair.
Highways Development Management have no objection to the amended plans. It's considered that the proposal would provide a safe site access for cars, commercial vehicles, refuse collection vehicles and pedestrians. The proposed visibility displays are also considered to represent a positive impact on highway safety on this corner of Moor Lane, which is already a pinch point, by widening the carriageway and promoting sight lines further down the street than are currently available. The indicative proposed plan shows that each dwelling would have 2 parking spaces, with 4-bed dwellings also having integral garages with space for 1 car. Additionally, the proposal would indicatively provide 3 visitor car parking spaces within the site and the relocation of 2 car parking spaces for number 27 Moor Lane, which would be lost to facilitate the proposed access road. Officers consider that based on the proposed number of residential dwellings, the proposed level of off-street and visitor car parking spaces are acceptable in terms of the Highways Design Guide SPD and the policy LP22 of the Kirklees local plan. I'll just point out where the proposed walls are to be removed. So it's just here at number 25 and here at number 27. The proposed access road would be set off from the side elevation of 25 Moor Lane by a 0.7 metre footpath, and this existing dwelling has windows overlooking the existing grass track. No information has been submitted to address potential impacts in terms of loss of outlook, increased noise, light and emissions pollution resulting from the use of the proposed access road on the residential amenities of the occupiers of the dwelling adjacent to the site access. However, officers consider that the use of planning conditions or obligations could potentially significantly reduce any detrimental impacts on residential amenity. The report before members provides a full and detailed assessment of the proposal, covering the matters discussed here, as well as other material planning considerations, such as affordable housing, housing mix, ecology and drainage. The principle of development is considered acceptable, and the proposal is considered to comply with relevant planning policies. A policy-compliant contribution for biodiversity net gain has been secured. The representations received raise concerns on a number of matters which have been outlined and addressed in the committee report and update. As such, officers recommend approval subject to securing the Section 106 and conditions as per the recommendations set out within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Alice. First speaker is Councillor Smage.
Thank you. As has been said, this is an unallocated site under the local plan. There have previously been 2 withdrawn applications for the site, well before the current local plan was being discussed. So surely if this was wanted for housing, it would have been brought forward at the time of the local plan rather than now. Stating that there is a shortfall of housing in Kirklees does not give the picture for us locally. We have had our fair share of house building and do not need any more on unallocated land. Our services and roads are already straining under the amount of new building we have had and are expecting in the area under allocated land. As for this application, there does seem to be many items in the report that are a however, meaning that there is more questions than answers. In respect of highways, and I speak as somebody who knows the road well, in respect of highways, I would dispute that that what proposals have a non-detrimental effect. The diagrams shows how a large vehicle would turn within the build area, but not necessarily how it would get out onto Moor Lane. At this moment in time, with cars parked, it is difficult to get more than one car up or down the road at a time. Two cars cannot travel in opposite directions at the same time on parts of this road. The visibility in the area of the proposed entrance to the land is particularly difficult to see. The amended proposal moves garden walls back and removes land from other properties in order to try to create that visibility splay. However, you can see this simply becoming either another parking area, because on-street parking is at a premium on this road, or a passing place for vehicles. Therefore, there will be no improvement in visibility lines. Many homes do not have their own drives because they were built many years before the advent of car ownership. It is already a difficult road for large vehicles, and to give an example, the other week there was a large vehicle being parked on Moor Lane in the vicinity of the proposed entrance, and it literally stopped the traffic both ways until it could manoeuvre into position between parked vehicles. The land itself serves as a natural barrier between housing developments that surround it on all four sides. Green space in this area is needed. We are going to add to our air pollution problems if we simply eradicate areas of green space such as this. Why ask for ecology or biodiversity compensation within this application when that green space is the ecology site and the biodiversity for the area? There are proximity concerns to other properties, including the listed building. Mention is made of the development being so many metres away from the Gummersall Conservation Area. However, the boundary of the conservation area, as has been said, runs down the centre of Moor Lane at this point and across by the listed building. Why are the concerns of conservation about the effects on the listed building in relation not only to boundary treatments, but the siting of plots 1 and 2 not investigated at this point in time? Surely, for outline permission to be considered, then the concern over a detrimental impact to the listed building needs to be part of any decision, as, according to the report, there is a risk of direct contravention of planning policies. In fact, there seems to be an awful lot of work that needs to be done on conditioning and mitigations for this development that is not the development that is right in this place. I would therefore ask the committee to reject this proposal. Thank you.
Please. Next speaker is Charles Buchanan.
Thank you. Amenity. The House Builders Design Guide sets minimum separation distances between new and existing dwellings. Minimums are 21 metres between rear habitable room windows and 12 metres between habitable and non-habitable room windows. 21 Sumdale has a lounge habitable window which overlooks a 26-metre side garden. All this garden sits on the boundary of this site. Plot 10's house wall will only be 7 metres away from this habitable window. This application does not comply with minimum separation distances. Officers' considerations about opacity have absolutely no bearing. The minimums are not achievable, opacity is not mentioned in the SPD, and the SPD has not been complied with. Plot 10's topography is at least 4 foot higher than 21 Somerdale. All these factors will result in overshadowing, loss of privacy and loss of light. Highways. A traffic counter has been used to prove speed limits on Moor Lane are slower than the road speed limit. This was placed at the slowest point on Moor Lane, near a dangerous blind bend, which gave reduced traffic speed readings, thus enabling the visibility displays to be calculated using a stopping distance of only 33 metres instead of 43 metres. The traffic counter should have been located at the grass track on Moor Lane, where the proposed access road will be, giving accurate speed data on which to calculate the visibility displays. The visibility display sight line to the left down Moor Lane has been measured to the centre of the road. Kirklees Highway Design Guide states this alternative left-hand sight line should only be used where traffic from the left cannot travel over the centre line of the road. Moor Lane does not include any features like bollards or traffic islands that would prevent a vehicle from crossing the centre line. In fact, vehicles travelling up Moor Lane are forced to cross the middle of the road because of the parked cars. This means that the vehicles crossing the centre of the road will not be seen from this line of sight by vehicles leaving the access road until much later, thereby causing a reduced stopping distance and a safety hazard. This sight line will create a blind spot for vehicles leaving this access road. The visibility display is substandard, dangerous and a highway safety hazard. This application should be refused on amenity and highway safety grounds. Thank you, Chair.
Next speaker is Ellen Davis.
Good afternoon. I'm Helen Davis from Binks Executive Homes, and I'd just like to give you a brief background into our site and our planning application. We've owned the land for a number of years, and during the course of our ownership, the site has always been earmarked as being suitable for residential development. The land is accessed by a lane owned by the council. By a deed of 1950, our land was given the benefit of a right-of-way over the access lane. This is a right-of-way at all times and for all purposes. In early 2016, we undertook a pre-application consultation with Kirklees Highways to understand how we could improve the current access to meet modern highway standards for a small residential development. Kirklees Council were very helpful and advised us that in order for the current access to be acceptable, then the visibility onto Moor Lane needed to be improved. Guidance was given as to how the improvements should be made and what would be needed. With this feedback, we have patiently spent the next 6 years obtaining the necessary visibility displays to meet those requirements. We have purchased the houses at 25 and 27 Moor Lane to obtain the necessary visibility displays over their front gardens. In addition, we have also obtained a visibility display over the front garden of 23 Moor Lane. The Highways Department also recognised that this visibility display will benefit all users of Moor Lane, as well as assisting with the visibility to our site. As part of our development, we will remove the wall abutting the road and replace this with road level paving. This would mean improved visibility across the bend in Moor Lane for all traffic going both up and down the road. I'm sure this will be appreciated by everyone who uses this road. Not only have we been working with the council on this planning application since 2016, but we believe we have submitted a comprehensive and exciting scheme. I'm very proud of the fact that since our application was submitted last June, we have worked collaboratively with the Planning Department and all the statutory consultees who have all given their support to our proposals, subject to suggested planning conditions. And I hope the committee will be able to support us today. Thank you.
Next speaker is there, Nick Willock.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Nick Willock, planning agent for the applicant. This infill site is located in a sustainable urban location within walking distance of local shops, primary and secondary schools, regular bus services and the well-regarded Oakwell Country Park. The council's ecologist agrees the site is of low environmental value, and it is a fact that the land is privately owned and has never been accessible to the wider public. The only amenity value is therefore in its current open aspect and its trees, the majority of which will be retained together with new tree planting. As officers point out, this is not a protected green space area in the local plan, and the principle of the development is therefore acceptable under national and local planning policies. Sites like this also contribute to the target of 4,500 windfall homes over the planned period, helping to prevent greenbelt land being needed in the future. A speed survey was carried out to demonstrate that average speeds are 25 miles per hour, and therefore the visibility displays proposed match the actual speed surveyed, ensuring that the proposed access would be safe. However, it is agreed that the 10 additional houses would not significantly impact on volumes of traffic on Moor Lane or on the local highway network generally. Furthermore, and addressing Councillor Smage's concern, a significant additional benefit is how this will improve forward visibility for traffic on Moor Lane coming around the bend to the west of the site, and also improve visibility for residents emerging from their drives on this side of Moor Lane. It also needs to be confirmed, again to address Councillor Smage's comment, that achieving and maintaining the approved visibility display will be subject of a planning condition, so the development simply could not go ahead without these improvements. The applicant's team have liaised closely with your officers throughout this case. The indicative scheme before you is a good quality development with considerable public benefits in terms of biodiversity and open space provision, good space about buildings to protect privacy of existing surrounding residents, decent gardens, a good mix of housing types to cater for a variety of housing needs, and finally, £35,000 of biodiversity net gain contributions to be secured through an already submitted Section 106 agreement. In summary, the proposals will provide a good quality development of 10 dwellings for the local community, which will help towards the council's current undersupply of housing and improve highway safety on Moor Lane. We would therefore like to endorse your officer's recommendation to grant outline planning permission in this case. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Right, members. It's over to you. Come on.
Thank you, Chair. I started. Chair, we hear every day from our government who are accusing local authority too slow to build houses to meet the needs of local people. Here we are using a vacant land which have been overgrown vegetation, not looked after that land as well. And the proposal is, it's a good mixture of family houses this time compared to the previous application, 1 bedroom. So it's more or less same area. It's a good mixture of family house, 5 3-bedroom, 3 4-bedroom, 2 5-bedroom, where we are, which will meet the needs of the family living in that area. Yeah. And we heard from the applicant agent. He is prepared to ask the officer to put a planning condition which Councillor Smage has raised about the road safety. So the visibility should be there. So it's our responsibility of the Chair, we haven't got any option rather than to think to accept the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the back of what Mohan just said, reference to the houses that are needed in the local area, I thought the previous conversation was that we needed more one-bedroom, not more 3, 4 and 5 bedroom, but I suppose that's another side story. I'd like a couple of questions answering. One, it's just been mentioned by one of the speakers that it will save Greenbelt from being potentially developed. I'd like to know if that is a fact or just because most of the Greenbelt's been allocated in the local plan. Is it going to save anything? So that's question one. It also has been mentioned that the majority of trees will be kept. So what does that mean specifically? That's question two. We've got a listed building that overlooks the plot. What does that mean as far as the rules on building near a listed building or the curtilage of a listed building? Because the back windows overlook directly onto that site. That's question three. If council are really serious about green space, what a perfect site to develop into a nice green space for the residents of about 250 houses in that vicinity, rather than building another 10 and decimating some of the green space in that area. And the unadopted, I thought I'd heard, I believe yourself mentioned that this plot would remain, or the road would remain, as an unadopted road. Am I correct in thinking that? So that was question 4. And I'll leave it for there for now. Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair, I did say that the road would be unadopted, just to confirm that. In terms of the listed building, the Conservation and Design response is that they do have some concerns about the removal of trees on the west boundary and the siting of plots 1 and 2, but they have said that it will be assessed as part of the Reserve Matters application. They do have no objections to the proposal, the application at this point. In terms of trees, there are a number of trees to be removed. 1, 2, 3. I believe around 10 trees, according to the arboricultural report. Those are mainly within the site, with the TPO trees, which are on the northern boundary, to be predominantly retained, and those are the higher value trees, according to the arboricultural report. The KC Trees officer, as I mentioned, was consulted, and they have no objections to the proposal at this point, subject to further information being submitted at Reserve Matters stage. Julia, is there anything else?
Oh, Sarah, you're going to win.
Oh, Sarah, thank you.
Through you, Chair. Sarah Longbottom, Deputy Team Leader in Development Management. Just to respond to Councillor Thompson's question about removing land or housing from the green belt, I think that was a point raised by the agent for the application, and what he was referring to was that this site would count towards, it's a windfall site, and there is a windfall allowance of 4,500 homes within the next 10 years. And this site would count towards that because it isn't an allocated housing site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a question to start with, and I'd like to explore a bit further this non-adoption of the highway. Exactly why is the highway not being adopted, please?
Through you, Chair. In this instance, the applicant has simply chosen not to pursue adoption. They're not obliged to, and in this instant, they have decided not to do. However, the internal arrangement will still have to be built to an adoptable standard in terms of dimensions and spacing. And just to head off any questions about the refuse collection on unadopted roads, as the dwellings will pay council tax, there is a duty by the council to collect refuse. So in this instance, an agreement will have to be reached with the council's waste team where they will have to enter the site on this occasion. It is uncommon, but it does happen now and then, and that has been demonstrated on the submitted plans. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you, Chair. Well, I'm not quite sure I'm convinced by all of that, because if the road has got to be built to adoptable standards, then why not adopt it? I'll just leave that sort of remark hanging, if you like. I'm not really convinced about this site. I hear all the arguments and understand all the arguments about using. Well, it's not a brownfield site, is it? Exactly, it's actually a greenfield site, but it's in a sort of landlocked location. So it would come under the heading of difficult to develop, unless you do something to improve the access. And I am not convinced that the access actually does anything for the amenity of people living at numbers 25 and 27 Moor Lane. I think the road will be far too close to them. And all right, I know there's not many people, not many cars going to use it. If there's only 10 houses in the site, but certainly during the construction phase, there will probably be quite a lot of movement, and I would not like to live in either of those houses while all that's going on. I mean, I do wonder whether part of the reason, as an aside, for non-adoption is that there's a footway on only one side of the access road. But I'd like to point out that we have a development in our ward where exactly that has happened, and the road behind it is adopted. It's a much larger development than this as well. So I'm puzzled by that. At the moment, I'm not totally convinced about this development, so I think I won't actually do anything more drastic at this stage, but leave my comments for others to comment upon or shoot down. Thank you, Chair.
Right, Councillor Bamford.
Thank you, Chair. I've got questions about the visibility part of it. It's going to be block paved. I've stood at the bottom of the drive today and I can't imagine how it's going to be when it's done. But with it being block paved, if someone parks on it, you're back to square one, especially if someone parks a van on there. So I've got concerns about that. If it is done, will it be done before the development starts? Because you've got construction traffic in and out there, massive vehicles, up and down, which is another concern, up and down Moor Lane in the construction phase. That's that one. The other bit is I'd like to see a better mix of houses, not just 3 and 4. I think a couple of 2 beds in there would be a better mix for that development, given that we've just passed one that identified a demand for 1 bedroom houses, but not 500 yards down the road. So yeah, that's mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick query, really, regarding visitor parking. I I share some concerns that Councillor Pinnock has referenced with regards to highways, and don't want to go over ground that's already been covered on that. But with regards to the visitor parking is obviously key, and it's always lacking, in my opinion. I don't know whether you agree, but the visitor parking on estates, new builds, tend to be so lacking. If you're visiting to drop a parcel off or something as a delivery driver, you can never. I'm not a delivery driver, but I would imagine it would be difficult for them to do this effectively if there's not a lot of parking. Now, I can see you've got 3 allocated spaces. Is it going to be possible for a temporary space to be put in somewhere along the frontage behind? If you could see, Chair, I'm just referencing this side here. I don't know whether there is like a specific delivery bay park that could be put in there. Just a thought on that one, because I do know that that's something that happens on a daily basis quite often now with the way people are shopping. I do have concerns, as I've said, with regards to this development on the highways aspect. The applicant referenced they were in discussions with Kirklees and they went over things and chewed things through with regards to the access. Is there any way that you could shed any light on what was discussed with regards to the potential for widening the access? Because we've clearly got a presentation now where the extension is going to be removed. But again, was there discussions surrounding potentially demolishing or altering one of the existing properties at 25 or 27? 27 is obviously semi-detached, so that's probably not possible. But with regards to 25, to alleviate access concerns, and if it was, would it significantly change the application in front of us? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Would it be possible to pull up the location map? Is that okay? Sorry about that. No, can you zoom out rather than in? Sorry. Okay, I was hoping to bring in Oxford Road and Dewsbury Road, but it's okay. So Moor Lane, which is the road that cuts through the bottom third of that map, is the rat run for Oxford Street, which is the Gomersall Road, and Dewsbury Road that goes from Birkenshaw down to Birstall. So it's used as a rat run most of the day and early evening. The congestion down Moor Lane is significant and is not dangerous, but it's severe enough for it to be made apparent to the committee that it is a road that's used heavily, even though it looks like a small residential road, which it is not. Just cutting somebody's garden off at the front to increase the splay as far as vision's concerned means nothing unless you actually travel down that road every day. In the bottom left-hand corner, as you come round the corner down into Moor Lane, then some of the cars coming up are travelling at speed, and it is quite dangerous on a normal day, let alone to come out into that traffic from each one of those drives down there, and all the parked cars that are usually on the bottom part of Moor Lane that you can see all the way down, that we saw this morning on the bus tour. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention as far as Moor Lane's concerned, that it is heavily used consistently through the day and at weekends as well. The next thing is, as far as it being unadopted, I would say out of the last 5 years of me being a councillor, one of the biggest nightmares that I get ongoing over that last 5 years is unadopted roads. If there's any challenges whatsoever, A, the police won't get involved, B, the council won't get involved, and then it takes residents to start getting into the expense of solicitors to try and resolve any sort of problem. So one of my strong objections would be for this to be unadopted. So that's the second point that I wanted to make there as far as the roads are concerned. So that's unadopted, Moor Lane, visibility that I've mentioned. It's on the double corner, which I've mentioned. So the next is trees. So we sort of skirt over the fact that we are in a climate emergency, as some people call it, and we have to do things and spend hundreds of thousands of pounds per month as a council on making sure that we save carbon, etc. But then we get a bit of a windfall piece of land and it's cast asunder, and all of a sudden it's okay to eliminate 10 trees. So that needs to be made a point of, that it's okay when we feel it's okay, but then we'll wave the green flag later. So I'm sure that we either are or we aren't. It's not that we are when it suits us and aren't when it doesn't. Somebody mentioned that this was a lane. Well, it wasn't, and it isn't. It's a footpath. So it's a council-owned and run footpath, not a lane. So we've got to get over the fact of what we class as a lane means that you could probably drive down there, but you can't. I'm told that it is a public footpath. So that's the next thing. And again, I want to bring us back to the representations. 106, I believe, representations for this site. So we can't overlook the fact that residents around that local area are not happy with this development. So are we got to sit here as a committee and say, well, it's a windfall site, it's good, you know, we can put 10 houses. Again, 10 people are going to get the advantage of a new house, but 106 people aren't going to be listened to that it's not an appropriate site. And it has been mentioned about visitor parking. It is severely lacking on this site. So where are they going to go? Where are the visitors parking? Well, I'll tell you where they're going to go. They're going to go onto an already congested Moor Lane, which there isn't room and it's not safe. So I will put forward that we reject this planning application. Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair. Looking at the proposal, that path that you mentioned, or the access into the site, is not a public right-of-way. So that sort of answers that one, hopefully. In relation to visitor parking, there's 10 dwellings proposed, and the ratio of visitor parking is 1 visitor space per 4 units, and they're proposing 3 spaces. So if there were 12 dwellings, 3 would be enough, but there's 10, so in effect, we're sort of half a space over, do you want to say? I don't know if there's anything else. Does that answer that? Oh. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want me to come in, Chair, in terms of the query regarding the loss of trees, climate change and things. So in terms of, I think, as part of the presentation earlier on, as part of any subsequent reserve matter, should the application be approved, the outline application be approved, we would look at a landscaping scheme as part of that. So that would include both potentially the retention of some of the trees on site, but also the planting of new trees within the site. So that can be secured as part of any subsequent reserve matters application. I think it's just reminding members this is an out
up the road, and we do know that there was bus services put on for that. And I'm convinced, we live in the neighbouring ward, I'm convinced that we've still got a regular service up to Grange Moor. There is sufficient parking though in the plan, so that covers that one off. I am very supportive of a brown field development, on the basis that every time we get something that isn't, we always complain that it isn't, and so it gets loads of brownie points from me on that score. So I'm just going to support Councillor Sokol and second.
Thanks, Jackie. Anybody? I'll just say one thing on Healy Lane. I remember going back some years when I was on Cabinet. For some reason, I ended up with highways in that portfolio, and there were one accident after another on Healy Lane, but all that has been remedied, and a lot of it were due to muck, slurry, sludge, because I believe that there's some quarries up there. Other accidents happened because of driver error, i.e. thinking that they were Lewis Hamilton, and they're not. But I know Kirklees did a hell of a lot of work up there, altering road surfaces, etc. Personally, on this application, I don't see out wrong with it. Quite welcome it, actually. It's been moved, it's been seconded. Has anybody else got anything else to say? Otherwise, we'll go to a vote. Right, go to a vote.
Going to vote to delegate to officers to approve. Councillor Pervez.
4.
Councillor Ramsey.
4.
Councillor Sokol.
4.
Councillor Amwell.
4.
Councillor Moore.
4.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Bamford. Councillor Gregg. Councillor Lawson.
4.
Councillor Pinnock.
4.
And Councillor Hall. So that's approved.
Right, page 89. Nina. This is Dewsbury Moor, not far from where we are. Is the internet working yet, Matt, or is it? We're back on. Right, stop swearing. Andrea.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Nina Sayers, the case officer for this application. The application is for a change of use and alterations to convert an existing building to a garage MOT testing station at Crossfield Farm, 17 Woodland Grove in Dewsbury. This application is brought to committee due to the significant volume of local opinion, with 33 representations received and a petition with 20 signatures. The application site comprises a derelict 2-storey detached house with surrounding hard standing. The site is accessed via Heckman Dwight Road through the centre of an existing commercial garage as shown on the aerial image. The surrounding area comprises a mixture of residential and commercial properties. The site is unallocated on the Kirklees local plan. A public footpath runs along the southern boundary of the site as shown in purple. The proposal would involve minimal works to the exterior of the property, including roller shutter doors and concrete ramps for vehicle access. It is noted that the openings in the exterior of the property have already been implemented. The land surrounding the property would be predominantly hard standing with car parking and access. It is noted that the area is already covered in hard standing. Properties 103 and 105 Heckman Dwight Road are located to the west of the site. The access from the adopted highway would go through the centre of these properties, which both serve an existing garage. This is a single track access through the centre of the adjacent garage. There is fencing abutting the pavement on Heckman White Road. When officers visited the site, there were cars parked on the roadside adjacent to the access and alongside the access with the adjacent garage. Officers have concerns that the access is not wide enough for vehicles to pass one another, preventing vehicles from entering and exiting the site in a forward gear. The visibility is limited from the access and sightlines are poor, and there is no access for emergency vehicles. Officers cannot support further intensification in use due to the harm that this would cause to highway safety. Kirklees Council Highways Development Management have also objected to the scheme on this basis. Representation has been received expressing concerns regarding highway safety, particularly during drop-off and pick-up times of the nearby Westmoor Primary School. The application site borders the rear amenity space of 18 residential dwellings along Groves Hall Road, Barleycroft and Woodland Grove. By introducing visitors and customers to the site, it will increase the number of people within the site, which is adjacent to neighbouring gardens and therefore would result in harm to the amenity of the neighbouring occupiers. 33 representations have been received, 21 in objection and 12 in support, as well as a petition in objection with 20 signatures. As outlined in the update, an additional noise impact assessment and highway statement were submitted on the 19th and 20th of June by the agent. This information has been reviewed, and for the reasons outlined in the update, officers have concluded that the information partially addresses the first reason for refusal, and so this has been amended. The submitted information does not overcome the second reason for refusal. In conclusion, the proposal has been assessed against all relevant local and national planning policies, taking into account the representation received. For the reasons outlined fully in the committee report, the proposal is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
First speaker is Nazir Shah.
Chairman, members of the Planning Committee, for the purpose of this meeting, I would like to briefly confirm my role. I am a Chartered Town Planning Consultant elected to the Royal Town Planning Institute with over 10 years local authority experience, currently representing clients nationally with planning submissions and appeals. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. This application is recommended for refusal, and rightly so, as in the professional opinion of the Council's planning officers, the proposed use would have an adverse and detrimental impact on the residential amenity of the neighbouring occupants as a result of noise and disturbance. Customers of the proposed premises would have direct views into gardens and habitable rooms of adjacent private properties. Whilst it is noted that numbers 103 and 105 Heckman White Road are currently operating as an MOT garage, this does not have the same direct relationship to a significant number of residential dwellings as the proposed site, and as such is not as close to sensitive receptors as the application site. In fact, members, this is the second such application on this site, and the reasons for refusal stated at the initial application have clearly not been overcome. There is already an MOT garage on the wider site, and there simply isn't the need for another one. The proposed development would clearly intensify the use of the site, resulting in a significant increase in the number of vehicles entering and exiting the site. The single-track access from Heckman White Road would not be sufficient for the additional vehicular use, and the access would not allow for the two vehicles to pass. This would result in vehicles having to reverse onto or off a classified B road. Access would also be difficult for service vehicles from Heckman White Road into the site, given the width of the existing access. As such, the access would be substandard and unsuitable for any further intensification in use, and could result in significant highway conflict to the detriment of nearby residents. I have significant concerns regarding the access and lack of visibility, especially in relation to the nearby Westmoor Primary School and increased footfall during drop-off and pick-up times. I feel it is incumbent to ensure the safety of primary school-aged children. This application is brought to the Heavy Woollen Planning Subcommittee due to a significant volume of local opinion, with 33 representations received. In addition to the endless objections, a petition was also submitted with 20 objections. Kirklees Council's Highways Officer also objected and recommended refusal of the application based on concerns regarding visibility, width of access, uncontrolled parking and a lack of access to service vehicles. So I'll just wrap up. This application has clearly been assessed against relevant policies in the development plan and other material considerations, and it is considered that the development proposal does not accord with the development plan. And I hope members are able to share the view of the various professional consultees whom oppose this scheme. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Andy Keeling.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. My name is Andy Keeling. I'm a planning consultant and I'm here to represent the applicant. As members are aware, when you make a decision on a planning application, you weigh up the positives and you weigh up the negatives and you come to a balanced judgment. That balanced judgment is often called the planning balance, if you like. And I suppose it's my job as representing the applicant to bring to the forefront of your minds the positive elements of this planning application. So what are those positive elements? If you look at the history of the site, you will see that it dates back some 12 or 13 years with a series of applications that have been refused for various developments. They've fallen at the first stage, if you like, at planning stage. But one fact has come out of those applications, and that fact is that your council considers this building to be a non-designated heritage asset. It is of architectural and historical interest. From what I understand from the architect and from the applicant, the building has been stood vacant for all those years and has fallen somewhat into disrepair and in fact dangerous to go into now. And it's at a point of no return nearly. So you might say that the opportunity to retain this building stands with this application. If it fails, it's unlikely that a successful application will be brought forward anytime soon. So you have a positive proposal in front of you that will retain a designated heritage asset. Sorry, a non-designated heritage asset. A second positive is clearly the employment element to this application. There will be people employed at the building, and it's a good use of the building in that sense because it brings forward the useful jobs to the site. To some extent, your officers actually agree with me on these matters because at paragraph 10.4 they say the site is unallocated in the Kirklees local plan. As such, in the broadest term, the development of the site is considered acceptable in accordance with local plan policies LP1 and LP2. And also, I'd like to remind members that not all the representations that were received were negative. There were 12 letters in support of the application. So I think some people do think that those positive elements mean that you can disagree with your officers and approve the planning application. Thank you, Chair.
The next speaker is Ayub.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. Firstly, I would like to elaborate on this breach of privacy. So on one side of the property, there is a wall running parallel down the site. It's around 8 to 10 foot tall, not allowing any breach of privacy along the boundary line. At the far end of the site, there is aluminium fencing, which was installed to secure the site to stop people from entering. This fencing eventually will be boarded up to secure privacy for all parties that may be affected. Key point to remember is this site is still under development and is not complete. This will then eventually result in zero privacy breaches. Moving on to the highways safety concern, we did instruct an independent assessment which was carried out, and it confirms that the application is in no way hindering or causing any more complications or risk factors to the highways regulations. Entrance to the site is occupied by an illegal gate. We have been thwarted over the years by the neighbouring garage, This has frustrated us in getting free and unencumbered access to the site. Kirklees gave them planning approval for an extension with conditions that they have not adhered to. Those conditions relating namely to the removal of the gates and the fencing to open up the site. Our current landlord has taken the matter to court with little or no help from Kirklees whatsoever. In my previous application, we wanted this building demolished and the erection of a new building and offices, which was rejected as the council wanted this building brought back to life. We have now gone without any grant and spent around £150,000 renovating this site from what it was, as per the previous Google images, a jungle. There was drug abuse on the site. There was people dumping on the site. There was multiple problems which we've tried to tackle as best as we can. Moving on to the noise issue. We've carried out an independent noise assessment against the existing background noise levels in accordance to the standards set out in BS 4142. The results of the assessment clearly indicate that the noise level from the site would be expected to result in low-level impact. This is also in accordance to BS 4142. If you refer to the noise report conclusion, page 9, the last sentence states that adverse impacts would unlikely arise from the development. I would like to also discuss operation controls. We as a business have a strategic plan on how we will be operating the site. They are as follows. Operating as an appointment-only basis. As per DVSA requirements, we will be only authorised for an MOT per hour. Taking into account a lunch break, we are estimating around 5 vehicles per day. And finally, the fact that obviously we will be bringing jobs to the community, taking people on, especially people who are signing on, etc. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you all.
Members, it's over to you. Councillor Ammar.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to bring in the recommendation for refusal on the basis of there's an existing garage there already near on the entrance of the site, as everyone saw this morning. There's also a day care centre just off Eckmondwike Road. There's a massive residential area next to Westmore School on the site. There's already big parking issues going on in the area, and with the existing garage already there, it's already causing massive highway issues. So I think by adding another garage there, it'll actually worsen the issue. Every time you drive past Eckmondwike Road, for those that have or haven't, you'll always see cars parked outside. And I've actually witnessed people reversing out of the current garage as it already is. So my recommendation is for refusal. And if you look back on the planning history, last September I was approached by a member of the public living nearby there. On the site, he actually sent pictures over a bulldozer that was ready to demolish this building on site. So luckily, planning enforcement officers got involved and put a stop to that. So I would like to recommend for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just questions more than anything. If somebody could enlighten me again, could we have the site map up, please? Okay. So if I'm understanding this right, where the red trumpet on the right-hand side is, at either side of that, those are independent garages. Yes? And one of them is an MOT centre. Is that what I understood it as? One of those is okay, so one is an MOT centre, and the building that we're referring to is, the application is to make it into an MOT centre. Right, okay. And the building that we have interest in as a council, have we looked after that in any way, shape or form and kept the heritage and kept it up to speed, or is that nothing to do with us?
It's not within the control of the council from that side of things, so no, it's nothing to do with us.
Right, so we would like it to be kept up with, but it's not the responsibility in any way of council, no, okay. So the other thing is about employment. I'm not sure having 5 cars a day into an MOT centre is going to create much employment. I know somebody local to us that's got an MOT centre and they put through about 35 vehicles a day with 3 staff. So I'm not sure about that, but I'm trying to find some positives here, and unfortunately struggling that there is any need for an application to go through. Therefore, I'd be supporting refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, planning balance. There is a positive here, which would be bringing the building back into use. As Mr. Keeley quite rightly said, that is a positive. But we have to balance at what cost. Highways have given us a very significant reason. We often find the things in committee unpalatable that the highways have to say. We often disagree with them. But when highways come to us and say, actually, an intensification of the use is going to be dangerous, then we must listen. We must listen. And I'm afraid that trumps bringing the building back into use. So, yes, I'll be voting to refuse. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, I agree with my colleagues there. Yeah, I think this site is not right place for the garage. Yeah, MOT. There is already some facility over there for another garage MOT. I think this site is surrounded by the residential area. They are already suffering. We heard from the local council. I don't know the local council. The local councillor. There is already problem there, highway problem. I think to grant another application to, I think we are not treating our residents fairly. Yeah, we are dumping more trouble over there. And I understand the site should be brought into use, but not for this purpose. It should be for other purpose, like something like a residential property or so. I'm happy to second Councillor Anber's move.
Councillor Pervez.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is my ward, Dewsbury West. Obviously, I know the area really well. Yes, there are problems, but I think this should be deferred instead of going against this application, and see if the applicant can work with the council and come out with an idea, see what we could do.
Any more? Councillor Craig.
Chair, I would second a deferral. I think that there's benefits to having a site on there, although I do share a lot of concerns about only 5 MOTs a day. That just seems ridiculously low, but I'm not an expert on that. I do think that this is a site that needs some sort of love. It hasn't had it for many years. I do respect a lot of the concerns that have been mentioned on both sides. If solutions to problems can be found and other members would agree to a deferral, I would be happy to second Councillor Pervez's motion. Thank you.
Councillor Anmar.
Just to let committee members know, this is the second time this is in a committee, so it has been brought here before. So the applicant has had time to re-amend or renegotiate with council officers, on which he hasn't. So I don't see on that ground it should be valid to get deferred.
I'm going to say I remember voting on this before, and I know which we'll be voting now, today. Any more comments, questions? No. The first proposal on the table, which was seconded and moved, was the one to accept officers' recommendation. So we will take a vote on that first.
Okay, so to vote on the officer's recommendation to refuse, Councillor Pervez,
Abstain.
Councillor Ramsey. 4. Councillor Sokol.
4.
Councillor Anwar.
4.
Councillor Moore.
4.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Bamford. Councillor Gregg.
Abstain.
Councillor Lawson.
4.
Councillor Pinnock.
4.
Councillor Hall.
4.
Okay, so the application is refused.
Next, page 101. This is Healy Lane at Batley, and it's Callum again.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon again, members. Callum Harrison, Senior Planning Officer and Case Officer for Outline Application 2022-93499 for the erection of 15 dwellings at Healy Lane, Batley. All matters that set foot access are reserved. The application has been called to committee at the request of Councillor Lowe and Councillor Pandor with concerns regarding to highway safety and overdevelopment. Both these matters shall be addressed in the following presentation. The application site sits between West Park Road to the south and Healy Lane to the north. To the east of the site is Healy Junior Infants and Nursery School. To the west are 3 dwellings. In terms of the character of the area, residential development prevails. However, Healy Lane Business Centre is also set close to the site. Dwellings in the wider area are mostly terraced or semi-detached with a small curtilage. There are, however, some larger dwellings to the west of the site. The application site red line boundary measures 0.49 hectares. The site itself is largely grassed, where there are remnants of areas of hard standing present to the northern parts. The site levels drop slightly from the north to the south towards a mature tree line, which will be retained. However, these trees are not subject to a tree preservation order. Originally, vehicle access into the site was from Healy Lane also. In terms of site history, back in 2014, when the site was council owned, outline permission was granted for up to 15 dwellings, alike as what being proposed now. As stated earlier, the only matter put forward at this outline stage, along with the principle of development, is access. Access is to be taken from Healy Lane approximately 12 metres further to the east than the original access. The proposed access includes suitable visibility and an acceptable junction radius for refuse collection vehicles and 2 vehicles to pass one another. There are also 2 metre wide pedestrian footways on both sides of the access. KC Highway Safety have also been consulted on the scheme. They raised some concerns on both parking and speed issues on Healy Lane. To overcome this, officers and the agent have agreed a contribution of £35,000 to provide 3 round-top road humps outside the development and adjacent infant school. A further £7,500 contribution has also been agreed to manage parking at the junction with a traffic regulation order. It's considered that these works, at the expense of the applicant, would enable the authority to conduct works which remove the highway safety concerns associated with the access. At the reserve matter stage, officers would also ensure to seek sufficient off-street parking and visitor parking is provided for future occupants as to not cause any material impact on the wider highway network. As such, in terms of highway safety, subject to the agreed contribution, the access is considered to accord with Local Plan Policy LP21 and the Highway Design Guide SPD. In terms of the traffic calming measures, it's the green line on screen on that bottom right picture, and the blue line represents an independent traffic calming scheme that is already under progress by the authority. So this would essentially act as a bit of an extension to that in terms of calming measures in that wider area. In terms of the principle of development, the scheme represents the delivery of a medium-sized housing development in a predominantly residential area. The site is also well positioned, being set close to a school to the east, a small commercial complex to the west, and by a bus route along West Park Road. Local and national policy sets out the importance of windfall sites like this in meeting the housing requirement of an area. The indicative site plan on screen shows that up to 15 dwellings can be provided on site in an acceptable layout. The proposed density also accords with local plan policy LP7. It is also in evidence by the indicative site plan that a high quality development can be delivered with suitable sized gardens, off-street parking and acceptable levels of privacy. Furthermore, no consultees have raised any objection to the proposed scheme. In terms of public open space, the applicant has also agreed to a contribution of £33,604 for off-site public open space. Kirklees Council Landscape Team identify that some or all of this would go towards maintaining and improving Healy recreational ground, which is less than 200 metres from the site. The applicant also agrees to 20% affordable housing. In conclusion, this application has been assessed against relevant policies within Kirklees local plan and other material considerations. It is considered that the development would constitute sustainable development and is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the imposition of the conditions set out in the committee report and the satisfactory completion of the Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
The speaker is Damien Hartley. He's not here.
Steve Owens isn't here.
Right.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Damien Hartley, and I'm the architect and the development consultant who represent the developer. First, I'd like to thank Callum and the planning team and the Highways for the support from the very start. We've worked very closely on the pre-application up to today. All 14 consultants have no objections, so that's a benefit for ourselves. In regards to the background, I just want to quickly go over that. So it was originally owned by Kirklees Council. You obtained planning permission for 15 houses with access off Healy Lane, and then you sold it at auction to my client. He purchased 2 sites. He's developed one, and this one, due to lockdown, he's decided to move it forward. So I'm proposing 15 houses for 15 houses, like for like, same access, with reserved matters. In terms of the scheme I've put together, I believe it's an enhanced scheme, purely because it's a mix of houses of detached. So there's 9 detached and 6 semi-detached, which will be for family and first-time buyers. The reserve matters lapsed in lockdown, and ultimately a new scheme was put together, which was a different architect, which faded away, and it was lost in the system. So this is a new scheme. I respect the highway safety comments, and I fully agree with the £35,000 contribution. I think it's a benefit to everyone to have safer roads and desirable. I fully agree with all Section 106 contributions, which come to £76,000. I believe Batley's crying out for new quality houses and economic investment, and new finance capital is key. In the recently announced £12 million levelling up fund that was granted to Batley specifically, announced by Councillor Panzor, who has commented on this application, he's seeking £60 million worth of new economic investment to revive the town. I'm from Batley myself, so I do know that it is in desperate need to be revived. This would contribute roughly £3 million housing development investment into the future economic growth of Batley. That will obviously filter down into the local economy, create new jobs to actually build the scheme out, and there'll be new opportunities off the back of this new development. I'm currently speaking to a highly respected Yorkshire developer who are very interested to develop the site for high quality private houses and social housing. in terms of, sorry. And we've also had inquiries for individuals to purchase this, the plots. I'll finish off. It's a brownfield windfall site for Kirklees Council for 15 houses of mixed use for families and starter homes. I hope you can all see the financial benefits that this new multi-million pound housing investment will offer. I believe it's an important contribution for the future economic ambition of Batley and, more importantly, Kirklees Council's levelling up agenda. Thank you.
But another speaker who is the applicant, but is not here from what I gather. So, members, it's over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to support this application on the recommendation of approval by officers. I've just seen down here that it was actually referred to this committee by Councillor Shabir Pando and Councillor Gwen Lowe. Understandably, I understand why Councillor Gwen couldn't be here today with us, but no news from Councillor Pando why he couldn't come and share his thoughts on why he wanted it to be referred to the committee. I don't think it's fair where they've given one site the go-ahead and it's been developed, and this one's been brought to the committee. So I would like to support it.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions on the school and the junction. I'm not really familiar with that junction. Like to know a little bit of details as far as highways, how busy it is, what the congestion's like. But I'd also like to know reference to the border onto a junior school as far as housing development and what the safety issues are and how we overcome those. Please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Similar territory. In the conditions, we'll have the construction management plan. Having seen this in reverse, rather than housing being built near a school, but a school being built near housing, I'd hope that we could have in the conditions that a close link is made with the school about, certainly during the remediation period of the land, about what times those heavy vehicles are passing to and from and outside the school, because it does make a difference. It does feel unsafe if you've got 15-ton lorries with full loads travelling up and down those roads. And I know from experience in my own ward. So I would like that specifically mentioned as a liaison between the school and the developer. The only other point that I would make is that I'm just going to say this out loud. The reliance on a TRO on the entrance to the site is, should we say, hopeful at best. If there's a possibility of looking into something a little bit more robust, then please can we? At the moment, I'm struggling to think what that might be, because I don't know, bollards and physical things are probably not appropriate, or even tree curbs. But if we can use our imagination and try and find something that would stop people physically parking across that junction, or that 45-degree angle that's across the drop curbs, can we please do so? Because we know that if you're there for 15 minutes, sometimes to pick up from school, not everybody takes notice of the TROs. Thank you.
I think this is one of the occasions where I would like to have more traffic wardens, because I'm pretty sure they would pay for themselves virtually every week. I'm sure they would. Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, huge benefit from the site visit this morning. It's really good to see the road safety measures that are going to be taken. So, and that the fact that that extends to what's actually happening on West Park Road. I thought the discussion that we had around the trees that are on the back of West Park Road, and the fact that they'll be able to remain. That looked really good. So I'm happy to second Councillor Amar's proposal.
Thanks, Jackie. Mohan.
Yeah. Regarding highway officers, road safety, I think highway should look at again, to do something more for road safety, especially for the school children who are going there. And during the construction time, as Council John Lawson raised it, and I think the two ward councillor might be right, because the ward councillor has more knowledge about the area rather than other councillor. Yeah, this is only outline application. I think the concern raised by member regarding road safety and the two ward councillor, I think highway should look at again on this one, as this application is only outline when they come to the reserve matter.
Right. Jackie.
Just a quick one, and again, it's the benefit of having the visit. So I asked specifically about the speed limit near the school, and was reassured by, and I'm just looking for you for confirmation, reassured by the fact that if those 3 speed bumps go in, it will naturally reduce the speed limit to about 20 miles per hour, which is I think what you said to me this morning, if you wouldn't mind confirming.
Through you, Chair. As discussed on the site visit this morning, the type of traffic calming that we've opted for, there's several different types. Now, this particular type we've opted for is called a round-top hump, and it is quite the most severe form of traffic calming in terms of slowing down within the design parameters that we're allowed to do. So that's why we've asked for that type. If personal experience, if you try and go over it too fast, you're going to end up with a car that ain't so good afterwards. So as a highways engineer, I can assure that type of traffic calming is the best for slowing traffic down, and any more than 20 miles an hour, then, you know, you're not going to, it's not going to be achievable. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to say, I mean, there is a scheme that's being talked about for West Park Road, and there's also a scheme for Whiteley Road, which is going to come part way up West Park Road, which means alternate traffic lights, etc., etc. So there's quite a lot of work to be done. We're in second lot of consultation for Whiteley Road, so I'm hoping that we get it started roughly by end of this summer. So, any more comments? Otherwise, we'll go to a vote, because it's getting rather hot in here, and then we can go home. It's been moved by Councillor Anwar, seconded by Councillor Ramsey, so we'll go to a vote.
Thanks, Jess. So the vote is delegate to officers to approve. Councillor Pervez.
For.
Councillor Ramsey.
For.
Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Anwar.
For.
Councillor Moore.
For.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Bamford. Councillor Gregg.
For.
Councillor Lawson.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
And Councillor Hall. So that's approved.
Well done.